The room is completely dark. The house has settled for the night, and somewhere in the silence, a heart is beating too fast. At 2:23 in the morning, the pillow feels as if it is made of wood, and the blanket is a restless weight. Tomorrow morning, a critical meeting will begin at 9 sharp, and you can almost count the hours of sleep left slipping away. What began as a few moments of wakefulness has now stretched into a full hour of churning thought and rising frustration. And the strangest part is not the tiredness. It is the growing dread that the bed itself has become a battleground, not a sanctuary. If someone asked you what keeps you awake, you would point to the unfinished report, the earlier argument, the news you read before dinner. Stress and stimulation seem like obvious answers, and they do matter, but they do not explain what happens next. Because on another night, when nothing is pressing and the day was calm, the same sequence plays out almost identically. You lie down, you close your eyes, and after a few minutes, a quiet worry about sleeping well creeps through your mind. That worry is not about the day that passed. It is about the sleep that is not yet here. The real puzzle is why the effort to fall asleep, a natural process the body knows how to manage, begins to push sleep further away. To understand that puzzle, we need to look beyond the obvious threats to sleep. We must step inside a hidden learning process that reshapes the meaning of your own bedroom. When a person sleeps well night after night, the bedroom takes on a quiet quality that tells the brain it is safe to let go. For a seasoned sleeper, the mere act of pulling up a familiar blanket can begin to slow racing thoughts without any conscious command. But when sleep goes wrong for many nights in a row, a different kind of signal gets installed in the very same room. The brain, a relentless pattern learner, starts to connect the sight of the bed with the experience of frustration and failure. Just as a kitchen timer can make a hungry dog salivate without any food in sight, a dark bedroom can make a tired human feel wide awake without any danger present. This is not imagination or weakness. It is a basic learning process that shapes countless other automatic reactions. The original trouble might have been work stress, a bout of pain, or a newborn crying, but the learning sticks long after the original challenge fades. Now the sleeper enters bed already bracing for a struggle, and that subtle bracing is enough to kickstart the body's alert system. Sleep scientists have measured what happens inside a person who lies down expecting a difficult night and found that heart rate stays higher, muscles remain slightly tense, and the brain keeps a faster rhythm. This state is often called hyperarousal, a scientific word for what feels like revving a car engine while the parking brake is still firmly on. Instead of coasting down into the slower waves of drowsiness, the mind hovers in a state of watchful monitoring. That monitoring takes a familiar shape. You begin checking how long you have been lying there, whether your eyes feel heavy enough, whether you are doing this sleeping thing correctly. And every time the check returns a disappointing verdict, another small jolt of frustration adds fuel to the alertness. At this point, the problem has doubled. The original worry about the daytime problem is gone, replaced entirely by anxiety about sleep itself. That switch is the central hallmark of chronic insomnia, and it explains why many people wake at 3 in the morning feeling a dread that has no clear origin. The dread comes from a learning history, not from a current catastrophe, a history in which the bedroom was repeatedly paired with helpless wakefulness. But there is another layer to this spiral, one that makes the paradox even sharper. The very act of trying hard to sleep becomes an obstacle, because sleep is not a voluntary performance like typing a sentence or lifting a weight. No one falls asleep by concentrating on falling asleep. In fact, focusing on the target makes the target recede until the bed becomes a test you can fail. Picture for a moment what happens when you try to force a yawn. The more you command your jaw to stretch and your breath to deepen, the more the genuine reflex hides. Sleep works much the same way. It is a passive surrender, not an active conquest, and demanding it only pushes it further out of reach. Psychologists have a term for this struggle: sleep effort, the deliberate, worried attempt to make yourself fall asleep. Researchers have found that people who score high on measures of sleep effort also report the greatest distress in bed, even when objective trackers show similar amounts of total sleep. The effort turns the pillow into a performance stage, where each minute of wakefulness gets logged as another small defeat. And because the brain treats uncertainty as something to resolve, it keeps scanning. Are my limbs heavy yet? Is my breathing slow enough? Am I drifting? When sleep scientists look at the electrical patterns of a mind trying too hard to sleep, they often see fast, alert traces mixed right alongside the slower waves of early drowsiness. The person feels ragged and exhausted, but a vigilant watchman inside the skull refuses to switch off because you keep asking it to report on the state of your sleepiness. Now consider what this does to the anxiety loop. The feeling of being exhausted but unable to sleep becomes frightening, and the fear makes the watchman even more attentive. In response, many people adopt logical strategies that backfire. They go to bed earlier to give themselves more time, hoping to guarantee enough sleep. But extra time spent awake in bed only strengthens the conditioned link between bed and wakeful frustration, giving the learning brain more practice at being alert in that space. Likewise, watching the clock becomes a potent trigger. The numbers on the screen confirm that time is slipping away, spiking a fresh wave of distress. Each spike conditions the brain a little more, weaving the bed more tightly into the anxiety network. At this stage, the anxiety about sleep is not simply a reaction to a bad night. It has become a self-sustaining predictor of the next bad night. The dread that arrives at dusk when you think about going to bed is the emotional signature of a well-learned threat, even though the threat is only the failure to sleep. This is where a surprising discovery from research offers a crucial turn in understanding. Trying to stay awake can, paradoxically, lead to falling asleep faster. In a classic approach called paradoxical intention, people with chronic sleep anxiety are instructed to lie in bed and try to keep their eyes open, to remain awake as long as possible. By deliberately removing the demand to sleep, the performance pressure collapses, and the anxious monitoring often fades enough that sleep slips in through the back door. That finding does not mean this strategy works for everyone, but it powerfully demonstrates that the engine of sleep anxiety runs on the fuel of sleep effort. When you stop fueling the engine, you discover that the body knows how to fall asleep on its own, once the inner critic stops watching the clock. Yet the anxiety about sleep is not imaginary or silly. It is a real and painful experience that has reshaped the nervous system's response to a familiar environment. The bed has become what scientists call a conditioned stimulus, a trigger that automatically activates a stress reaction without your conscious consent. Breaking that automatic link is the foundation of many powerful treatments, such as cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, which has been carefully studied as an effective approach. These methods do not simply tell you to relax. They systematically help you rebuild a new association between bed and calm surrender. One core step is stimulus control, using the bed only for sleep and never for tossing and turning with worry. If you are lying awake for what feels like 20 minutes, the instruction is to leave the room, do something boring in dim light, and return only when sleepiness genuinely returns. Now return to that dark bedroom in the middle of the night, where a person has been lying for over an hour, heart thumping, mind replaying the same worry. This time, however, the person understands something crucial that changes the story. The anxiety is not a sign that sleep is impossible. It is the sound of a learned alarm system ringing in response to a signal. The bed is the signal, and the alarm is the brain's honest, misguided attempt to protect the sleeper from the danger of another sleepless night. The tragedy is that the protection itself causes the sleeplessness, like a guard who keeps the fortress so tightly locked that nobody can rest inside. This reversal has a name in psychology: the sleep paradox, where the safer you try to make your sleep, the more anxious you become about protecting it. The more rules you create, like sleeping exactly 8 hours or never stirring, the more your mind judges every minor awakening as a failure. Normal sleep naturally includes brief awakenings between cycles, but the anxious sleeper interprets these normal events as proof that something is still wrong. That alarm then prolongs the awakening, turning a 30-second shift into a 40-minute battle, which then reinforces the original fear. So, the anxiety about sleep feeds on a misunderstanding of what healthy sleep actually looks like. Most people with insomnia get more sleep than they think. The suffering is often magnified by the distress of being awake while they believe they should be unconscious. That distress is real, and it can make a few minutes feel like an hour, deepening the sense of helplessness. But here is the turning point. If the problem is a learned loop, then learning can cut it. And the key lies in a quiet paradox, letting go of the demand to sleep. This is not the same as giving up in despair. It is a calm, deliberate shift away from the internal battle. Think of it as signing a peace treaty with wakefulness, saying in a gentle voice that if you stay awake, so be it, you will simply rest your body quietly and let your mind wander. When that treaty is sincere, the threat level drops because the performance anxiety has been released from its cruel assignment. Now we arrive at the deepest insight of all. The anxiety about sleep is not a malfunctioning brain or a broken person. It is the predictable outcome of a well-meaning learning system that has made a catastrophic categorization error. That system, designed to keep you safe from genuine threats, decided that not sleeping is a threat that must be avoided at all costs, and it armed the very defenses that make sleep impossible. And that decision was made not by conscious reasoning, but by countless nights of frustrated conditioning, invisible and powerful. Understanding this is the beginning of reclaiming the bedroom. You are not fighting a mysterious defect. You are gently retraining a watchman who has been working overtime without a real enemy. That watchman cannot be fired by shouting. It can only be calmed by repeatedly showing it that the bed is once again a safe place where nothing horrible happens. And the tool for showing it is not trying harder, but doing less, getting up when agitation swells, engaging in a quiet activity, and returning only when drowsiness pulls the eyelids down. Over time, the bed regains its original meaning as a cue for rest, and the dread of bedtime slowly unravels. This is not always a rapid cure, but it is a road with a clear map, and thousands of people have walked it successfully guided by simple, consistent steps. A person lying awake at 2:23 a.m. is not a victim of an unfixable curse. They are a learner in the middle of a difficult lesson about how to stop trying to control the uncontrollable. So when the dark comes and the familiar worry stirs, you can begin to recognize it for what it is: a conditioned echo, not a prediction of doom. You can notice the fast heartbeat and say to yourself that this is your body doing its learned job, and you do not need to follow its alarm today. From that small distance, the pressure eases enough that the body can remember its native wisdom, the blueprint for sleep we all carry from infancy. Serious chronic insomnia often benefits from professional guidance because the learning has had years to dig deep tracks, and untangling it alone can be exhausting. But the principles remain the same. Change the relationship with the bed, reduce the effort, and make peace with wakefulness when it arrives. You do not need to love the night. You only need to stop waging war on it every time the clock turns past midnight. Many people find that keeping a consistent schedule, avoiding caffeine late in the day, And dimming lights at dusk support this rediscovery. But they are the stagehands, not the lead actors. The lead actor is the quiet decision to stop evaluating your sleep as a performance and start treating your bedroom as a sanctuary rather than an arena. It may take weeks or months for the new learning to overwrite the old, and there will be nights when the watchman stirs again. But those nights are not relapses to despair. They are reminders that the old pattern is fading. Now, close your eyes and picture that same bedroom you visited in the beginning, the one with the restless pillow and the heavy silence. But this time, imagine the person lying there letting go of the demand, breathing out a full, slow breath, and silently accepting whatever comes. The heartbeat quiets, the muscles unclench, and without any fanfare, the body drifts toward the edge of dreaming. And the final insight worth holding on to is this: anxiety about sleep is not a verdict. It is a teacher that shows you where you have been trying too hard to run a process that runs best on its own. The moment you understand that, the bedroom becomes, once again, a room where the darkness is simply darkness and nothing more threatening than a quiet invitation to rest.